Adobe Photoshop with the Geographic Imager plugin. I'm going to start off very basic for those of you who are not familiar with Landsat. I'll give a very brief interview or overview of what Landsat's all about. Then we're going to go to a website, a data portal where you could download it. Downloading it isn't as easy as it should be, so we'll briefly look at that, and then we'll jump into the tutorials and do some pretty sophisticated stuff. Now, I will say, don't worry about taking notes. This webinar will be recorded, and you could go back and look at the techniques step by step if you want. Also, as you can see on my screen, I created a little website about Landsat 8 and Photoshop and Geographic Imager. All of the techniques that I'm going to be covering today are on this website. So this is a good resource. Tara, I think, will copy the URL into the chat dialog so you can see the URL. It's on the shadedrelief.com website. So
well, Tom, I don't know if you're, sorry to interrupt you. I don't know if you're sharing your screen yet, but I don't believe we're seeing it.
Oh, okay. Let me share the screen then. And once again, where's that little button?
It's in the top right. There's a little icon that says screen. Just above the control panel.
Yep. How's that, folks? Can you see it now?
I certainly can see it.
Great. Okay, so this is my Landsat Photoshop tutorial. This is just the intro page. If I scroll down a little bit, you'll see some little talking points, Landsat 8 at a glance. Let me cover a few of these that are relevant to today's tutorial. Landsat, amazingly, was launched back in 1972. Landsat 8, the latest incarnation, was launched in 2013. So there's been 7 other versions of Landsat through the years. It's a program that's jointly managed by NASA and the U.S. Geological Survey. Landsat is, they're satellite images. They're not the type of satellite images that you could zoom in really close and see your house. The maximum, or I should say the native resolution is 30 meters, although we'll, in this tutorial, see a way to increase that resolution to 15 meters. Landsat images are 185 kilometers wide. It's about 110 miles. So they cover a fairly large swath of Earth's surface. And this is a really important point. Landsat does not take pictures from a satellite up above. There's 3 sensors on the satellite. And what they do is they collect data from the electromagnetic spectrum in discrete portions called bands. And what we'll be doing is combining these bands to create images in today's tutorial. And a couple other things. Images are taken in mid-morning, and there's a reason for that. Mid-morning is when atmospheric haze and cloud cover tends to be at a minimum and at most places of the Earth. So it kind of makes sense to do it in mid-morning while the sun is also, pretty high in the sky. And the daylight image, Landsat images, are taken as the satellite traverses Earth from north to south. So that's Landsat 8 at a glance. Now, if we scroll down on my website, I think you'll find this chart very useful. These are all the bands that comprise Landsat. There's 11 in all. Most of these bands are not visible to the naked eye. Several of them are, and we'll be discussing how these bands can be mixed and matched together to create images. So that's Landsat 8 at a glance. Now, how do you get these images? There's several portals available online to download the images, and I should mention that the images are in the public domain, which is a wonderful thing. So you could download them and use them however you wish. This is the USGS's Earth Explorer website. earthexplorer.usgs.gov. When you open it up, this is what you see, a map image centered on Sioux Falls, South Dakota for some odd reason. That's actually where they're headquartered. And to get a image, pan to the area you want. And in this case, we're going to be looking at the Vancouver area. So here's Vancouver in the window, and just click on the place that you want. So that little marker says that's where we're going to go find Landsat images. Also, in this case, I'm going to if I down below, you'll see the date range. I don't want all dates. I'm interested in midsummer when the vegetation is growing very vigorously and the snow has melted from the mountains a bit. And let's go to the Datasets tab. Now you'll notice that the Earth Explorer portal offers lots of different data types. Here's Landsat, or rather Landsat right here. Down below, you'll notice there's Sentinel. That's the European Space Agency's satellite images that you could also download, and that could be a topic for another webinar. But let's click the Landsat tab and see what we have. There's lots of choices. The one that we're interested here is Landsat Collection 1, Level 1. These are the images that you could actually download on the spot to your computer. The other ones that you would actually have to order these and put them in a cart. So this third one down is the one that we want to go for. And I would also mention that there's Landsat Legacy. These are the Landsat images going all the way back to 1972, which are sometimes very useful. In fact, just this morning I was mapping Columbia Glacier in Alaska, and I wanted to show previous extents of the glacier, and in this Landsat Legacy area, I downloaded a 1978 image showing where the glacier extent was at that time. 12 miles further down the fjord than today. No surprise there. So let's collect. Let's click there, and we're offered even more choices. The one that we're interested here is the first one. So just click that first box, and I'm going to go to this additional criteria tab. When you get the images right now, they would be all images regardless of how much cloud cover they have. Generally I want images without too much cloud cover. So let's select less than 20% on land and hit results. And here are all of the images that are available in July with 20% or less cloud cover for the Vancouver area. And let's just scroll down. I looked at these things earlier, and the one that I really liked was this one from July 5th, 2017. If you click on this little footprint, you see, a footprint of the area covered by the Landsat image. And if you click on this little down arrow, that's where the download options are. And of course, there's even more choices. The ones that we're interested in are these bottom two, the Landsat look images with geographic reference. That will be a pre-composited Landsat image using bands 7, 5, and 3. That's mostly in the infrared range plus green. And then if you click the bottom one, there's almost 900 megs of data there. These are all the raw data bands. Now, I'm not going to click these because it would take us a long time to get them, but I've downloaded these bands already, so we'll have them on my desktop to run through. So, Tara, I think at this point, if anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, no questions have come in yet. If anybody has any questions, you want to just type them, we'll just take a second, type them into the Q&A panel there. Otherwise, you can carry on, Tom.
Okay, I'll forge ahead here. Okay, so the first thing we're going to look at, here's that July 5th image. I've downloaded all the raw data bands that we can see right here. And here are the Landsat look images. There's 3 different files in here. The first 2 you could ignore. The one is a quality assurance band for reflectance. We don't care about that. The second one is a thermal infrared image. It looks very much like an X-ray. And it's the third one, which is a false color Landsat image that will open up. Now, what's kind of interesting is the Earth Explorer website identifies Landsat look images as being natural color. You could see it on my screen right now, and it's anything but natural color. Nevertheless, I find these Landsat look images to be very useful just for a cartographic reference. If you want to see where something is, the chances are you could find it on the image. Look at how well land and water and snow is delineated on the image. Now, if you zoom in on this, and we'll do that right now, let's look at downtown Vancouver. This is 30-meter resolution. So there's a limit to how much you can see on this, but nevertheless, for large features on Earth's surface, it's a pretty good resource. So let's zoom back out. And what we'll do first off is create a mosaic of 2 Landsat images. I downloaded a second Landsat look image. This one was taken about a month and a half later in August, and we'll open this one up. This image is just to the north. So if we grab the first one, the Vancouver image, and just kind of slide it down here, you can see, what is it, Henderson Lake here and Henderson Lake there. There's about, 25-30% overlap between the two. Now, what we need to do is to create a single composite image by mosaicing these. And thanks to Geographic Imager, this is exceedingly easy to do. There's a couple different ways that you could access Geographic Imager. The first one is to go to the File, Automate, drop menu, and all of the Geographic Imager commands are here. Here's the one for Mosaic. And the other way is to go into the Geographic Imager palette window, which I have docked to the right side of my computer screen. And here it comes up. We can see that it's this image is in the UTM zone 10 north, and other information about it. It's 7,800 pixels wide, so it's a fairly large image, and it's RGB color and 8-bit. So what we want to do is mosaic the image on the left to the image on the right. So I'll click the mosaic tool button right here, and the mosaic palette comes up. Mosaicing is incredibly easy. This highlighted image on the left, if you want to composite it with the one on the right, just click here and it goes over. I would leave all of the default settings in the palette. That generally works well. The image on the left will come over as a separate layer in Photoshop, so you can manipulate it if you want. A really handy option is this crop to destination extents. What that does is the image that you're bringing over, in this case, the one to the left, that'll be brought over to the image on the right, it'll be cropped to the artboard size to the image on the right. Sometimes that's a very handy thing to do. In this case, we want the full extent of both images. So I'm just going to click OK, and these images will be composited together. Ah, beautiful. So here's our mosaic, and of course the first thing that you notice is that there's this black sort of void margin around the images, especially the one to the north, which is blocking out the image to the south. So we'll have to get rid of that, and there's an easy way to do that. We'll go to the left where my Photoshop toolbar is. I'll click the magic wand tool, and let's look at the layers palette first before I do that. Here are the 2 images. Here's the one to the north, which I'll toggle on and off. Okay. So what I want to do is get rid of the black on the image on the topmost layer. So I'm going to look at my magic wand settings. Let's bring the average up a little bit, the tolerance at 10. That's probably pretty good. And we'll contiguous and okay, sample only this layer. Click on the image and it selects all of the black. Now I could hit the delete key and remove the black, but there's a problem doing that. Typically, there's a little bit of a black edge around the margins of the image. So what I typically do is modify the selection a little bit. I expand it just by a few pixels. 4 ought to do the trick. And that just made the selection a little bit larger. So when I click the delete key and then deselect, we have nicely composited images. Now, if you are using this image for a map reference, this would be good enough. The image, taken in August to the north is a little bit darker. The vegetation isn't growing quite as vigorously. The sun angle is a little bit lower, but who cares? We could see everything that we need very well on it. However, if that, for whatever reason, that seam line that you see between the two images, and let me toggle them here again. If that is an annoyance or something that you want to remove, we could do that with a layer mask. In the layers palette, with the top image selected, go down and add layer mask. You can see the layer mask to the right of the image now. Next, what I'll do is get my gradient tool. And where is that now? Here it is, gradient. We want to use a linear gradient, and what I can do is, with the layer mask selected, this will just be masking the mask. I could create a nice blend there. But you can see that only got one part of it. It didn't really work all that well. I just did an undo. What I'd like to do is use the edge of this as an alignment guide so that the gradient mask is parallel to the images. And let's take a look at the layer mask now. And you can see that feathered edge on the mask. Go back to this and you can see how nicely these merge together. If you want things to look a little bit better still, because the top image has a slightly different tone than the bottom image, at this point, what you could do is select the topmost image. Make sure you select the image and not the layer mask. And let's do an adjustment, color adjustment. And my favorite one is hue saturation. We'll open up the hue saturation dialog. And in this case, I think we need a little bit more saturation on the north image. 10 is about right. And let's lighten it up just a tad. And I'll click the preview button now. Yeah, now they're blending pretty good. So at this point, we've got a very nice Landsat mosaic going on. I'll go to my layers palette and go down to flatten image. It all becomes one continuous image now. Now, next one I'm going to do is show you how you could bring this image into Adobe Illustrator and using Map Publisher as a map reference. Now, I don't want to bring this whole image in. I'm interested in updating the alignment of the Fraser River that we see flowing from east to west. What I'm going to do is just crop the image, so I just have the Fraser River on it. Double click, and what's very important is when you have a Landsat image like this and you're bringing it into a map publisher, a document, that you're using the same projection on both. The map publisher document that I'm using is in a geographic projection. This Landsat image is in the UTM projection, so they would be incompatible. So what I next have to do is transform the projection of the Landsat image that we're looking at. And to do that, we'll go back to the Geographic Imager panel, and we'll go to the Transform button, and we will click on the projection. In this case, I'm going to go up to recent. These are some of the projections I've been using recently, and Geographic Imager kindly notes them all. Here's WGS 84. This is the way the Geographic Imager identifies the geographic or plat carré projection. So we'll click OK here and hit transform. And you'll see this transformed in a couple seconds into a very squat Landsat image in the geographic projection. So we've just transformed it. Now we need to save this as a GeoTIFF. We'll go back to the Geographic Imager panel. We'll go to the panel options flyout menu and use Quick Save to Format. Let's save this as a GeoTIFF. Click OK. And let's call it Fraser.tiff, and I will put it on my desktop. Okay, that's just been saved. Now, another key component when you're bringing a Landsat image into Map Publisher is you need a world reference file to locate the image in geographic space. So we'll have to save that as well. Go back to the Geographic Imager palette, to the flyout menu, and export reference file. And Geographic Imager knows to call it Fraser. We're going to put it in the same place on the desktop. So there we have both of those saved. At this point, we don't need this image anymore. And I will open up a map in Adobe Illustrator and Map Publisher. Those of you who have used the Natural Earth data set may recognize it. This is the 10 million scale data. And what I'm going to do is use that Landsat image that we just mosaicked and saved to update the alignment of the Fraser River. So in my layers palette, I have a layer already called Landsat. We'll go to File, Place, look for the Fraser TIFF, double click that. And then here we are. I could just click anywhere and it'll place the image, or I could click drag and it'll put a smaller version of it there. And of course, it doesn't align to the Fraser River at all. So what we'll have to do is go to the Object Map Publisher and Register Image. And let's look for the TFW world file that we also exported. There it is. Click Open. OK. And this is very important, and I sometimes forget to do this. You have a choice here. Create a new map view. We don't want to do that. We want to use the existing map view of our map, which is right here. Then click OK, and bingo. There's our Landsat image placed right under the Fraser River. Now, you'll notice that in Natural Earth, the river doesn't quite align to the present day course of the river on the Landsat image. So let's just update that. I'll select the river line. I'm just going to do this with a pencil tool, and I'm using a trackpad and my index finger. Let's see how well I could do this. And we'll draw it over. And bingo. The Fraser River now has been updated. It looks like I need to put out a new version of Natural Earth. At this point, since the map's been updated and we don't want to do anything more to it, we could just delete the Landsat layer, save our file, and just go on our merry way. So this ends this module. And Tara, if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Okay, great. There is one question that was resulting from the first section. So is there a way of downloading lots at once? I think that's referring to the Earth Explorer.
Yes, there is. I've never done it, but I know that you can put in a request for multiple images.
And that's something they would have to, you'd have to request it and then they send it to you separately?
Yes, that's right.
Okay. Great, thank you. That's a great question. And Ilya, are you, if you're looking at the questions, do you want to take the second one? question is, are there any automatic tonal equalization techniques based on the whole image in Geographic Imager or Photoshop? I'm not sure if that's something that's a little more than we want to get into today or not.
I know that some of our customers, they create their own way to adjust adjustment techniques to equalize tones there. There's nothing built in that Geographic Imager provides. I know this is done using Photoshop functionality. There's nothing out the box that I can suggest, unfortunately.
Okay, thanks, Ilya. It looks like that's it for now. Tom, if you want to carry on.
Sure will. Okay, so we just made a mosaic. The next thing we'll do is a technique called panchromatic sharpening. You may want to use that term at the dinner table tonight to impress your family and friends. What panchromatic sharpening does is it increases the apparent resolution of Landsat images from 30 meters to 15 meters. So if you need more detail, this is the technique for you. So what we'll be doing is working with that Landsat look image of Vancouver once again. The first step that we want to do is increase the image size. We're going to increase the dimensions by 200%, and we have all these resampling algorithms. Pick the preserve details for enlargement. That'll maximize the amount of detail that the image has. And I'll click OK. This is going to take maybe about a minute to process. So essentially, this is going from an image that's 7,800 pixels wide to one that's almost 16,000 pixels wide. So it's increasing the size of the image. However, a very important thing to remember is you're increasing the size, but you're not increasing the resolution or the detail. It's still a 30-meter resolution image. It's just the size has been increased. And but what we need is a double-size image for the next step. What we'll do is we'll go into the raw bands. We'll select something called band 8. It's a panchromatic band. Basically, it's a black and white image of Earth at 15-meter resolution. And what we're going to do is combine the two and make this Landsat look image a lot sharper. So there's the Landsat look image. It's bigger. Let's go in here. Here are all the raw data bands. The way you could identify one band from another are these the B6, B7, B8. So B8 is short for band 8. We'll open up band 8. So here's band 8. It's a panchromatic black and white image of Vancouver at 15-meter resolution. And I could tell that you're probably not impressed. It's very dark and dingy. So what that means is we have to lighten this up with a curves adjustment. Now, one thing to realize about these images is that they're 16-bit. Your common 8-bit image has 255 grayscale levels. A 16-bit image has 65,000 grayscale levels. So what that means is we could really manipulate this image, tug on a curves adjustment and not have to worry about banding artifacts occurring. So let's do just that. We'll go to Image, Adjustments, and Curves. And this, by far, is the trickiest thing about manipulating Landsat images in Photoshop. If you just do a linear adjustment like I'm doing right now, things really don't work that well. What we need to do is actually apply a curve to kind of tease out all the detail that we need to see. Now, one of the things that you have to be really careful of is if you've got snow-covered ground, that you don't blow out the snow-covered areas. Let's see if I can blow it out a little bit. So you want to have the detail in the snow-covered areas. I also look at dark shadowed slopes. I want to have detail there as well. So typically I fool around for several minutes with these curves. If you don't like the way the curve is going, you could just click on a curve point, pull it off to the side, and just start again, click again, add another curve point, and just keep on tweaking this. I did this earlier today and saved a preset. If you click on this little gear-like icon up the top center, let me load the preset that I saved. It's just called Panchromatic. Click OK. And here's the curve that I developed, all kinds of data points on it. I thought that looked pretty nice, so I'll click OK. Great. And now what we'll do is we'll combine this with the Landsat look image. But first, what I'm going to do is go to image mode and go from 16-bit to 8-bit data. Basically, this is making the image about 1/3 of its original size. So when I copy, I'll do a select all and then copy it. And let's bring it over to the Landsat look image and paste it on top. Okay, let's zoom in and look at the Vancouver airport area. And I now have the Panchromatic image on top, which is in black and white, and the Landsat look image below it, which is in false color. And you can see the resolution difference, 15 meters, 30 meters. Now, the trick is, how do you combine the best of both worlds? And fortunately, that's very easy. Just go to your blending mode menu here, go all the way down to luminosity, and that's all you need to do. So zoom in a little bit closer. On the airport, we're zoomed in to 400% right now. I'll toggle on and off the Panchromatic image, and you can see how it just brings a lot more detail to the Landsat look image. Also, the Landsat look image changes a little bit in color, but that really doesn't matter so much since we're just using this as a geographic reference for cartography. So there's one other thing that we could do to increase the apparent resolution. I'm going to flatten this image now. And as soon as it flattens, now I'm going to apply a little bit of sharpening. Go to the good old unsharp mask technique. And you have to be really careful here. Use unsharp mask in moderation. If I jack this up all the way up to 500%, that's obviously way too much. I typically like to start around 100, with a radius or of 0.5, 0.6, somewhere in there. If I toggle the preview button, you can see how that sharpens it up. Now, this is not adding any more resolution to it. It's just adding a little edge contrast to the image so it looks sharper. And we'll click OK. Now let's go to the history palette, and this is really kind of fun. This is the original Landsat look image, and this is the results after Panchromatic sharpening and unsharp mask. It's almost like going to the eye doctor and getting that new prescription and suddenly being able to see the world sharper and clearer. So that's Panchromatic sharpening. If anyone has any questions, this might be a good point for me to answer them.
Looks like we have a quiet group today, Tom.
Okay, well, obviously I must be explaining myself very well.
Yeah, I think we'll just ask people to continue putting their questions into the Q&A as they come up. And meanwhile, carry on and we'll get to as many as we can at the end.
Okay, good.
Right.
Okay, so far we've just been using the false color Landsat look images. Sometimes we want an image that looks much more realistic in natural color, and this will be the last technique that we'll go over today. And let's do that by opening up 3 of the raw data bands. Band 4 is red, band 3 is green, and band 2 is blue. We'll select all of those. open them up simultaneously. Okay, so we just opened up 3 data bands or 3 data channels. They're 16-bit grayscale images. Obviously, this does not look too colorful or natural. So the first step, what we'll need to do is go to the channels window, go to the flyout menu and merge channels. A dialog comes up. From mode, go to RGB. We want to have 3 channels and click OK. Now, we'll have to make a couple changes. Photoshop messes up the order of the red, green, and blue. Remember, red is band 4, so let's make sure that band 4 is in the red. Blue is band 2, so we'll swap that one in, and Photoshop actually gets band 3 or green correct. So click OK. And here we are. We've got a not so beautiful natural color image. Again, it's just really dark, which means we're going to have to do a curves adjustment to lighten this thing up appropriately. So image, adjust curves. And let's see what we could do here. And I have to confess, this is a very tricky one to do. This one took me several minutes to get it right. And just like that panchromatic image earlier, what you have to be very careful of is making sure that you've got tones in the bright highlight areas, the snow area, and some of these shadowed slopes. Try to tease out as much detail as you can. Actually, this doesn't look too bad. I did one also earlier. I loaded it as a preset. Here it is called Vancouver. We'll open that one up. Again, lots of data points. I thought that one looked a little bit better. I'll click OK. And let's zoom out a little. That's not too bad. If you wanted to at this point, it's quite permissible to go in and do a second adjustment. This is still a 16-bit image. So you don't have to worry about banding artifacts. You could add like a little classic contrast with an S curve like this if you wanted to, but let's not do that. We'll just keep it the way it is. Let's zoom out and look at this. So now we have a color adjusted red, green, blue natural color image. And one of the things you'll notice is it looks kind of hazy and gray. There's a lot of atmospheric haze, and this is very typical of Landsat images. At this point, what we could do is go in and do additional curves adjustments or use other colors correction tools to brighten up the image. But I have an easier way that I like to do this. What I do is I get the corresponding Landsat look image that we had earlier. Let's open that up. I'm going to select all, copy it, close it out, and then paste it on top. And while I'm thinking about it, I'm going to go from 16 to 8-bit mode. It'll be a little bit easier on my computer. So let's just toggle these 2 layers off. You can see there's quite a difference between the two. To warm up the natural color image on the bottom, what we could do is just simply go to the opacity slider and just bring it down a little bit. And to my eye, that certainly looks a little bit better. Obviously, if you come up too high, it gets pretty gaudy, and it's probably not something that we want. We could also look at changing the blending mode. One of the blending modes that I like a lot is soft light. And let's play around with this a little bit. Let's add a little bit more, try to get that right. Another blending mode that I often use is hard light. This has a bit more of an intense effect. I think I like the soft light better. Oops. There we go. Let's bring it, 50% or so. So I think that looks, pretty good at this point. So what I'm going to do is flatten the image. And I think it's almost there. If we look at some of the snow-covered areas, I think they could be whiter. So let's do another image adjustment. And in this case, let's go to selective color, and we'll select whites here. And I'm just going to knock out some of the magenta and yellow on this. We'll click the preview button. Yeah, that looks definitely more snowy to my eye. And I seem to remember the blues were pretty intense. So let's dial those back a little bit. Select blues, and let's take some of the magenta out. Let's take a lot of the yellow out, and we can just lighten it up. Take the black out, and yeah, I think that looks like a more pleasant blue to my eye. Zoom out, and there we have a natural color Landsat image of Vancouver. And oh, there is one other thing I wanted to cover with you. Let's zoom in. This is incidentally still a 30-meter image. If we wanted to, we could apply panchromatic sharpening to this. So we would double the image size, and then copy and paste the Band-Aid, the panchromatic layer on top of it, and go to luminosity mode, and you'd see double the detail on here. But what I'd like to do right now is you'll notice in Burrard Inlet, there's a lot of boat traffic. You may need to edit the image, and of course, boats which are just temporary in the water. There's probably no reason why we can't get rid of those, since water is constantly changing. Let me make I'm using the spot healing brush right now. If I click on this boat and the wake and just pull down, boom, it's gone. So, I think you could, make edits in the water without worrying too much. However, I would advise you about taking entire islands out. That's probably not a good thing to do. One thing that you'll no doubt encounter is you'll find the perfect image. However, there's a cloud or two on the image that you want to get rid of, because clouds are very bright and white, and they have dark shadows under them, and they tend to be quite distracting. If the cloud, for example, was in this sort of central area here where my cursor is right now, kind of a nondescript wooded area, I probably wouldn't hesitate too much taking the cloud out there. However, if the cloud was over central Vancouver, I wouldn't dare do that at all. So with that little bit of last advice, I'll end the tutorial and open it up to the questions. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Tom. That was great. Great advice there, and lots of good tips. So we have a couple of questions. Now would be the time, if anybody else has any questions, file them into the Q&A. And in the meantime, there's two here for you, Tom. So will your sample map be available? Able to make this file available at all?
Yeah, I guess so. I could share the raw data or this file if you would like. I could hand it over to you, Tara. And would you be able to put it up online?
Yeah, I think we can find a way to send a link out to it to be able to download it. That should be fine.
Okay, great. Yeah.
Great. Okay, another question from David. I would love to see the workflow for highlighting or isolating infrared data in Photoshop for things like fire footprints or lava flows. I've done this in GIS, but curious if there's any advantages to working in just Photoshop for IR data.
David, I really don't know. My sense is that it's probably better in a dedicated GIS.
Okay, you can always certainly download a trial of Geographic Imager and play around with it and see if you can do the things you want to do.
What you can possibly do there is use Photoshop like Magic Wand and other selection tools that select pixels based on their color. So if you can visualize it, you can then select it, and then if you want to export, you can probably export as a path. So there's some Photoshop tools can probably help you to do that. I don't think there's anything dedicated specifically for this purpose, but definitely Photoshop has the whole functionality that allows you to work with selections based on colors. Because at the end of the day, it's a false captured image, so you basically are selecting a specific color there.
Mm-hmm.
All right, thanks, Ilya. Okay, a question from Zen. Why would you not use primarily levels and then if it goes well, move to curve manipulation? Sorry, I think that's just a question about adjusting the colors.
Yeah, and that's a very good question. Almost all of the images that I have to adjust in Photoshop require a non-linear adjustment. Levels is linear. So, you're going to be, you can't get the right tonality in light areas, in dark areas, and in the midtones. You basically have to have a curved adjustment to get it right.
Okay, it looks like, let me see, it might be one more here. Hold on one second. Can LiDAR images be manipulated in the same way?
Oh, good question. I have not done it. I suspect to a certain degree, yes. I mean, if you have a LiDAR image and you bring it into Photoshop, you could do all of Photoshop's adjustments to it. No problem at all. If it's LiDAR elevation data, certainly some funny things could happen to the elevation data if you're playing with curves, for example. I don't know if you'd want to do that, but it's certainly something that you could try doing.
Okay, I'm not sure if you're an expert on this or not, Tom, but can you give us a quick explanation of the key differences between Landsat versus Sentinel data? Use cases, I guess.
Yeah. I'm certainly not an expert on this, but I'll say some of the key differences. Landsat has been around since 1972, so there's 40 years plus of images for time analysis comparisons, which is very handy. It's all in the public domain, which is very good. Landsat, has a native resolution of 30 meters, whereas a Sentinel is what I believe 10 meters. So Sentinel has much higher resolution than Landsat images have. Another advantage of Sentinel is, I believe, the width of the images is 280 kilometers versus 185 for Landsat images. So when you download that Sentinel image, you get a bigger swath of Earth's surface. And also the Sentinel images are downloaded or taken every 5 days of the same place on Earth's surface versus 16 days for Landsat. So Sentinel data has a lot of advantages over Landsat.
Sounds like you are an expert after all. Is there any way to make any atmospheric corrections in Geographic Imager?
I don't know. In Photoshop, I suspect you could use their quality assurance band for applying atmospheric corrections, but it's not something that I have done.
Okay. Let's see. Rosalind asks, do you use any other sources other than USGS?
No. I find that the USGS Earth Explorer portal, very easy and full featured to use, and plus it offers other data sets on it. So it's my go-to portal for downloading Landsat imagery.
Got it. Well, it certainly is simple, and as you said, it's in the public domain, so that's got that going for it too. Okay, it looks like that's it for now. If anybody else has any other questions, you can always contact our technical support team here at Avenza there's a web form at help.avenza.com. And Tom, I'm just going to recapture the screen here for a moment. And sorry, one second. Of course, things just never go the way you want them to, do they? All right. I hope everybody found that tutorial informative today. Thank you so much, Tom, for taking the time to teach us some of your tips and tricks. I think everybody, judging by the comments in the chat window here, it looks like everybody got a lot out of it. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you, Tara. It was my pleasure.
Excellent. And if you, as I mentioned, if you have any other questions about Geographic Imager, you can contact our tech support team at help.avenza.com. Keep an eye on your inbox. We'll be emailing out a link to the recording of this webinar tomorrow, so you can watch for that in case you want to go over anything or would like to review. And as I mentioned earlier, if you haven't tried Geographic Imager yet, you can download a 14-day trial on our website at avenza.com/download. So thanks again, everybody, for joining us today, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you, Tom.
Okay, goodbye.